Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cosy Rosie UK, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how to crochet this Christmas tree mug cozy. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you never miss out another one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. This mug cozy is made using two different stitches. We have just your nice simple single crochet increases at the bottom to make a base. And then we have the mini bean stitch, also known as the Elizabeth stitch, worked to give you two trees, one on each side of your mug cozy. So regardless of which hand you hold your mug in, you can still see the beautiful Christmas tree. I've also included some instructions to allow you to put a fastening around your mug so that it comes off very easily. And I've got a different mug here. Yes, I do have a Christmas jumper on as I'm filming this. I wanted to show you fitted on a different size mug. Just to show you, this one is a little bit bigger, but it still fits the same size mug. Oh my goodness. I don't have many plain mugs, so I wanted to show you it with a cozy on. And these little snap fasteners that I've used, which I'm going to tell you all about in a moment. Oh gosh. Let's imagine it was for the drink. It's still pretty easy to close the snap fasteners without spilling. And it just means that you can use any mug that you've bought from the shops. If you want to make it a sweet gift, you could just pop in a sachet of hot chocolate, maybe one of those melting hot chocolate sticks, even a pair of slipper socks. There's so many different things you could do to jazz this up as a gift. Or of course, just use it on a festive film day to make your drink last a little bit longer when it's warm. So let's go through the materials we need to make this cute Christmas mug tree cozy. So I'm going to be using this off-white, which is Paint Box Yarns Simply Aran, which is a size 4 yarn. This is shade 202, which is called Champagne White. This is just yarn I've got left over from making my Jolly Holiday blanket. And then you can either choose to use a dark green, like this slate green here, shade number 226, or I've got my other favourite green, which is slightly lighter in colour, which is a pistachio green. This is also some scrap yarn because you really don't need very much of either colour. Now for shade A, which I'm using shade number 202, that's Champagne White, you only need 40 metres. And for your contrast colour, shade B, you need about 25 metres in total. So it really is a great scrap buster. If you've got some shades hanging around that you want to use, you can just grab 40 metres of shade A, 25 metres of shade B. You're going to need a 5mm crochet hook. I'm using one of my favourite Furls wooden hooks here in a 5mm, which corresponds with the hook size. And one other thing I'd recommend is some snap fasteners. You don't have to use invisible ones. As I've shown, these are pretty much invisible once they're sewn on, but you can use the metal ones to make it even easier to close. These are a 7mm snap fastener. You could go a little bit bigger if you only have that size available, but these work absolutely great. These are just sewn on, and they come in pairs. As you can see, I'm not very good at taking these off. You just snap them off. That's probably why that one's still on there. And they have a pointy bit, probably known as a male and a female, and a pointy bit and a hole, and they literally just fasten into each other. Oh, when they're new, they're quite tight, but they just allow for a bit of a fasten around the mug cozy. I'm going to leave that on there so I don't lose it. I've linked below all the products I've used today in this tutorial. And reference to the mug size, they are bog standard mug sizes. They're not overly big, not overly small, but they're certainly not a teacup size. So gather your materials and let's get started. So with colour A on our hook, which for me is the Champagne White, we have our slip knot. Remembering this loop on our hook never counts as a stitch. We're going to start by making a chain of 4. So we just yarn over the hook and bring it through 4 times. That was 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're then going to slip stitch into that first chain that we made, just going under one of the loops, yarning over, pull it through and straight through the loop on our hook to create a slip stitch. So we start by making a chain of 1. which does not count as a stitch, and we're going to work into the center of our ring. I'm going to make sure I work over my end as we go, and we're going to be working 8 US half double crochets into the center of that ring. So we yarn over the hook and insert into the center. Got my yarn just out of the way as well. We yarn over to bring up a third loop, yarn over, and we're going to pull through all 3 loops on our hook. We're going to do that for a total of 8 times. So that was number 1. So we yarn over, insert back into the center, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that was number 2. All the time I'm holding that tail just against that ring. We yarn over, insert, bring a loop up, pull through all 3. We do that, as I said, for a total of 8 times. So that's 1, 2, 3 we've done so far. Insert for number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. To close this ring, we are going to slip stitch to the top of our first stitch. So we've got where we've joined our ring here, there's that chain 1 that does not count, so we're going to skip over that, insert our hook underneath the 2 loops of the first stitch that we made, yarn over, pull through and straight through the loop on your hook to close that ring. And if you've worked over the end of your tail, when you pull that, it will close the center to give us a nice circle. At the end of round 1, you should have a total of 8 half double crochets. Going straight into round 2, we begin with that chain of 1 that does not count as a stitch, and then this time we're going to be working 2 half double crochets into each stitch around. So this is where our slip stitch is. You can just see you've got the stitch at the top, and we're going to go underneath that stitch. So we yarn over, insert, bring our loop up, pull through all 3 loops, and then we're going to work a second half double crochet into that same stitch and pull through all 3. We're going to repeat that around, so we're going to be increasing our stitch count to a total of 16 half double crochets. So we yarn over, insert into the next stitch, pull through all 3, yarn over and reinsert into the same stitch to work a second half double crochet. I'm going to continue to repeat that all the way around, working 2 half double crochets into each stitch, and our stitch count at the end of round 2 will be 16 half double crochets. It's always worth just double checking your stitch count at the end of each round to make sure that you have your correct stitch count. For the end of round 2, we should have 16 half double crochets. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and this is number 16. We're going to slip stitch to the top of that first stitch that we made. So there's our slip stitch, there's our chain 1, and we're inserting our hook into the top of the stitch, just picking up those 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through and slip stitch to join. You can put on it tightly to make it disappear a little bit. And at the end of round 2, once again, we should have a total stitch count of 16 half double crochets. For round 3, we chain 1, and this time we're working 1 half double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1. We are then going to work 2 half double crochets into the next stitch. I'm going to repeat this pattern of working 1 half double crochet into the first stitch, and then the next stitch we work 2 half double crochets. So we're increasing into every other stitch in this round, and our stitch count will increase by 8, giving us a total stitch count of 24 at the end of round 3. Continue to repeat that around, working 1 half double crochet into one stitch, followed by 2 half double crochets into the next, and I'll meet you at the end of round 3, where your stitch count will be 24 half double crochets. At the end of round 3, you should be ending your round working 2 half double crochets into that last stitch. and we're going to slip stitch to join to the top of that first stitch that we made. So you've got your slip stitch, your chain 1, and there's your stitch at the top of your post. So we just insert our hook, pull through and join with our slip stitch. Round 4, we begin with our chain of 1, and we are increasing again in this round. We start by working 1 half double crochet into the same as our chain 1, a half double crochet into the next, followed by working 2 half double crochets into the next. So we're working 1 half double crochet into the next 2 stitches. So that was 1 and 2, followed by 2 half double crochets into the next. So once again, our stitch count is going to increase by 8 by working 1 half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, followed by 2 half double crochets into the next. And at the end of round 4, your stitch count will be 32 half double crochets. So we're working 1 half double crochet into each of the next 2, followed by 2 half double crochets into the next. Continue around and I'll meet you at the end of round 4. At the end of round 4, you should end working 2 half double crochets into your final stitch. There's our slip stitch, there's our chain 1. We're going to join to the top of that first half double crochet that we made with a slip stitch. And our stitch count at the end of round 4 will be 32 half double crochets. Round 5 is our final increase round. We begin with our chain of 1, and we're going to work 1 half double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. We're starting by working our first half double crochet into the same stitch that we joined. So that was 1, 2 and 3, and then we work our increase into the next, working 2 half double crochets. We're going to repeat this around, working 1 half double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. That's number 3. And then we work 2 half double crochets into the next. Emily having a snore for a change. So we're going to repeat this all the way around, working 1 half double crochet into each of the next 3 before working 2 half double crochets into the next. And at the end of round 5, your stitch count will be 40 half double crochets. So continue around and I'll meet you at the end of round 5. Just working my final increase into that last stitch, and we're ready to join to the top of our first stitch, ignoring our slip stitch and our chain 1. We're just joining to that first stitch that we made, and that is our final increase. I'm just going to bring my hook up and out for the moment, just to show what we're looking to achieve at this point. We should be able to fit our mug on, and it should fit the base. This is a slightly smaller mug than I usually use. When I bring in the other mug, you can see that it is still over the base of our mug, and that's because we don't want it to be too tight. These shapes are quite standard, and you can see they both fit within the base of this mug cozy. I'm going to pop my yarn back on my hook, making sure that my tail and the wrong side of our project is to the back. And we're going into round 6, where we're going to start using the mini bean stitch, which is also known as the Elizabeth stitch. We're going to start by making our chain 1, which still doesn't count as a stitch. And then we're going to work our bean stitch into the same stitch as our chain 1. And we start by inserting the hook, yarning over, bringing a loop up. We yarn over the hook and reinsert it into the same stitch, yarn over, bring up a 4th loop, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops and chain 1 to close. I'll pull that out so we can do that again together. So we don't yarn over first, we insert the hook into that same stitch as our slip stitch. We yarn over to bring a loop up, yarn over the hook, reinsert, yarn over to bring up a 4th loop, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops before closing that bean with a chain 1. We're then going to skip the next stitch before working a bean stitch into the next. I've got to resist yarning over my hook. So we're skipping 1, inserting into the next, yarn over to bring a loop up, yarn over, reinsert into the same stitch, yarn over to bring a 4th loop up, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops and close that bean stitch with a chain 1. Now what you can't quite see is that you have a little space next where our chain 1 was made, and we're going to need to refer to that later, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We're going to repeat this the whole way around, so we skip the next, so we skip 1, insert into the next, bring our loop up, yarn over, reinsert, yarn over to bring up that 4th loop, pull through all 4 loops and chain 1. We're going to repeat this all the way around. Skip 1, insert, bring your loop up, yarn over, reinsert, bring your loop up and pull through all 4 and close with that chain 1. That chain 1 is going to give us that space we need to work into when we come back the other way, because we are going to turn at the end of this round. So continue to repeat that all the way around till you reach your last stitch. I'll meet you there so I can show you where you need to slip stitch to join. And as another reminder, we are going to be turning at the end of this round. So continue to work your mini bean stitch, making sure you close that with a chain 1, skip the next, and I'll meet you at the end of round 6. Once you've worked around, I'm making my final chain 1, and we're going to join to the side of this bean stitch here, just by inserting our hook, pulling through and slip stitching to join. And at the end of round 6, you should have 20 bean stitches. You should also have 20 of these spaces, and it's these spaces that we're going to be working into. We're going to be turning at the end of round 6, so we start with a turning chain of 1. So we turn our work, ready to begin round 7. Now this chain 1 space here we're going to ignore. We're actually going to start working our round into the side of the bean stitch just behind our join, and these working into the side of our stitch or into the side of our bean rather than into the chain 1 spaces is what causes the tilt in the bean stitch. If you've ever tried the bean stitch before and found that it's gone straight, it's because you've worked into the chain 1 space instead of into that all important side of your bean stitch. So we're going to start by working our first bean into this space here, not into that chain 1 space. So we're almost working back on ourselves to work our first bean. We then chain 1. We're going to skip over this chain 1 space and work into the side of the next bean to complete the next. Make sure you've done your chain 1 after you finish, because that's what creates that next space when we go into our next row all round. So we skip the chain 1 space in between and go over into that next side of the bean to continue to repeat that same pattern of a bean, chain 1. So we skip the chain 1 space, working into the side of that bean before closing it with a chain 1 again. So we're going to continue to repeat that around for the remainder of rows, they're still rounds, for the remainder of round 7. And I'm going to meet you once you've worked your last bean, ready to join, and continue on where we're going to no longer be working in rounds. I'm just working my final bean stitch, making my chain 1, and then we're ready to join. And once again, we're joining to the top of the first bean stitch that we made by inserting our hook and pulling through. She says, a bit tight, there we are. Now at the end of round 7, you should still have, flip it back the right way, you should still have a count of 20 beans. And 20. And at this point, you should be able to fit your mug inside and be up to the bottom of that handle. It just gives us a nice edge or a nice seat for our mug to sit into. And we have the wrong side facing. If you've joined and you're not sure which way you're working, just undo your slip stitch and rejoin. Make sure you've done that last chain one, because I always get confused with which side we've just joined on. And once you've slip stitched to join, we are going to go into row 1. So from now on we're working in turned rows, so we're not going to be joining row 1. So we're going to start with our turning chain of 1. We turn our work so that we have the right side of our project facing us, and it's really important to note that we're going to start our project in the chain space, well, in the side of the bean stitch directly behind our join. I've got my very brightly coloured needle, so we're going to be working in here initially. So we start row 8, a US half double crochet into the space directly underneath our join. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. Now all the other beans would of course be worked into those spaces, but so that we can maintain the stitch count that we need, in this row we're going to work into the next chain 1 space, and that will allow us to keep the same stitch count. After your half double crochet, we need to make our chain of 1, and then we are ready to go into our pattern repeat with our bean stitches, and we're going to be working into that chain 1 space with our first bean. So we insert, pull a loop up, reinsert back in, pull through all 4 and make our chain of 1, and then we are ready to work into those sides of our bean stitches again with our bean stitch closed with our chain 1. We're going to work a bean stitch into each of the side of the beans around until we have 2 spaces remaining. So you should have 18 bean stitches because we've worked an extra one in here. So we're going to have our half double crochet, we've worked a bean stitch into that chain 1 space, chained 1 of course, and then we're working into the side of our bean stitches so that we have a total of 18 beans, and that's where I'm going to meet you. So I've done 3, this is number 4. Continue working your bean stitch, which is closed with your chain 1, around until you have 18 beans. You should have 2 beans remaining to be worked, and that is where I'm going to meet you, ready for us to work the final stitch of our round. And then we are ready to continue on to row 2. I keep calling it a round now. Oh dear. And then we're going to continue on to row 2. So once you've worked around, you should have 18 beans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Because we worked into that chain 1 space, we should have 2 beans unworked currently. Done my final chain 1 by the way. So we have these 2 last bean stitches, and we're going to skip them all together. Instead we're going to work a US half double crochet into this chain 1 space next to the bean stitch we've just worked. So we yarn over the hook, we're inserting into this chain 1 space next to our bean, and that completes row 1. Now the reason that we're leaving a space is because it gives us a space either side of our handle for our handle to fit. It's quite a large space, but that's why we're going to create a space around it. It's quite hard to show you without it looking funny because I'm pushing it. But we're going to leave a space now for our handle to go, which is why we're working in turned rows. So you should have 1 half double crochet at each end, and you should have 18 bean stitches as well. We're going into row 2. We're going to start changing colours as we work across this row. So we start with our turning chain of 1. I'm going to turn my work. You should have the wrong side of the work facing you now. And we're going to start by working a half double crochet into the same as our chain 1, which is the top of that half double crochet. So work that first half double crochet. We then chain 1. So we're going to skip this chain 1 space, working into the side of the next bean, but we need to work in colour B. Now obviously there are lots of different ways to change colours, but for this to have a really clean colour change, I would recommend completing the chain 1 in colour B. So I've just pulled out that chain 1 that I made with colour A, and because I have the wrong side of my project facing me, I'm just bringing colour A to the front, or where I'm working, so it's on the wrong side of my project. I'm bringing over my new colour, pulling through, and then I'm going to make my chain 1 in colour B, pull down on colour A, and it hides that colour change. Now we're going to be working 7 bean stitches in colour B, but we need to carry colour A along with us. So I'm going to weave this end in at the same time. No, I'm not. Just for ease, I'm not going to weave this end in with you. I'm just going to show you how I work my colour changes. So this is how I change colour to get a really clean colour. I change colour in the chain 1 before the colour change is required. We're then going to be working into the side of our beans with colour B. So as you can see, I'm working over colour A, but the colour A is at the back of our project. But I'm going to move it out of the way to do the yarn over for the bean. And there is a reason behind this. Just do my chain 1. When I show you the right side of my project, you can't see that I'm carrying colour A. What I found was, make sure you've done your chain 1, if I work both parts of my bean, just to show you the difference, you can see the colour showing through. So my recommendation is, for carrying, is you can start your bean working over the carried colour and then move it out of the way for the second part of the bean, and it won't be as visible on the right side of your project. You don't have to do this, obviously, it's entirely up to you. So we're working 7 bean stitches in colour B. So that's 1, 2, 3, it's number 4. No. 5, 6, and 7. Now before I do my chain 1, we're going to change colour because we're going back to colour A because we've made those 7 beans. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 in colour B. So I'm changing back to colour A. Let's not twist those. So I'm just bringing colour A up and over and pulling through, and then we need to do chain 1. Now we're going to need our green further around, so we're now going to carry colour B while we work with colour A, and we're making 4 bean stitches in colour A. So I'm working over for the first part, yarn over and through without working over colour B, and chaining 1. And again, from the front, you can't see that we have worked carrying that other colour. So that was number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So we yarn over and pull through, and we're changing back to colour B. You see I gave a gentle tug there because what we don't want are loads of loops of the extra colour being seen. You can barely see that we've carried the green colour behind, and when we work back the other way you won't see it at all. So make our chain 1 in colour B, and then we are going to work colour B. We're going to make 7 beans in colour B. So just like before, we're working over and then not over for the second part of the bean. And I'm going to repeat that around until we've made the next 7 beans, and I'll meet you for our final bean in colour B. So I'm just working my final bean stitch, which is Make sure I go back into that space, not into the chain one space. And then we can change back to colour A, ready to work, a half double crochet into the top of the beginning of the row. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then we've made the base of our Christmas trees. So you should have, this is with the right side facing, so this is where we've carried the colour on the wrong side. We started off with a half double crochet. We then worked seven bean stitches in colour B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've done 4 beans in colour A, and then another 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in colour B, and ended with another half double crochet. The biggest trick here is definitely carrying the yarn behind, and now that we're going into row 3, we're going to start with our turning chain of 1. We make a half double crochet into the top of that first stitch, the same as our chain 1, and because we're going to change straight back to colour B, this time I'm keeping the colour A to the back because we don't want to see the colour changes, because this is the right side of our project, because our tail is on the wrong side. So I've changed back to colour B, ready to do chain 1. Our first space, where's it gone? Oh, that's tiny. I made that really small. That's our first space to be worked into the side of this bean, and we are working 6 bean stitches in colour B. So no yarn over here. I'm going to be indicating like you have to yarn over. And again, we're carrying colour A, and I'm doing it in the same fashion, but I'm just going to move it out of the way when I come back through, keeping it on the back of my project. So that was 1. I'm going to carry 2. And this is the final bean stitch we're doing in colour B. And then we can work our chain 1 in colour A. So we should now have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in colour B, and we are then going to work 5 beans in colour A. We still need to carry our green colour, so again we're going to just hold that in place and work over it for one part of our bean stitch just to help carry it around. So that's 1, 2, we're changing back to colour B, so just drop colour A to the back, pick up colour B, don't pull too tightly because obviously you don't want to be changing the look of your stitches. And then we are continuing on working 6 bean stitches in colour B, and then we'll have 1 bean remaining that we need to work in colour A, so continue to carry that across, and I'll meet you for our final bean where we're changing back to colour A. I've worked those 6 beans, I'm just changing back to colour A. So that's nice and tight, and then we're working our final bean stitch. Don't need to carry the green for this one. We're making our final bean stitch in colour A, close with our chain 1, and then we work a half double crochet. We yarn over to work a half double crochet into the top of the half double crochet from the previous row. Once we've worked that final half double crochet, we're going to make a chain of 6. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and this is going to form our first join when we come back in row 4. Going to bring that up for a moment just so we can check that we have Christmas trees that are starting to come in. You should still have a total bean count of 18, just the number of beans in blue have gone down to 12, and you now have 6 white beans. So ensuring that you've done your chain of 6, going into row 4, we're going to be continuing with A, and we're working into that second chain from hook, and we're working a half double crochet into each of the chains down from the second chain from hook. You can, if you want to, opt to work down the back of your chain. I'm not going to be doing that, I'm not going to lie. It's a little bit fiddly for something that is not that noticeable. So we're just yarning over and inserting our hook, bringing our third loop up, pulling through all 3. So that was number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then number 5, and that brings us back to the beginning of our row again. We're going to work a half double crochet into the next, and then we are ready to continue working back our next row. We need to do our chain of 1. We're then going to bean into the next, continuing with A. And then we're going to change to colour B, so I'm just going to pick that back up and complete that chain 1 with colour B. Going to continue to carry colour A. You must remember that your opening is going to be, might be just tucked behind your colour change. So we are doing 5 bean stitches in colour B. So work your 5 bean stitches, each closed with your chain 1, and I'll meet you for the next part of row 4. I've worked my 5 bean stitches, and then I'm ready to change back to colour A. We're then going to make 6 bean stitches with colour A. Still continuing to carry our unworked colour all the way along, because we're going to need that for the other side of our mug cozy, but we are making 6 bean stitches with colour A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course, I'm going to complete my chain 1 with my colour change, and then we are ready, of course, to work 5 bean stitches with colour B. Once we've worked those 5 bean stitches in colour B, we can change back to colour A. We're going to work our next bean stitch in colour A. I'm not carrying the green because we don't need that for the next, until we come back in the next row. Done my chain 1. We're going to end the row by working our half double crochet into the top of the stitch from the previous row. And we can flip it around again to have the right side. And there we are. Our tree is fair coming in. So at the end of row 4, you should have a total of 10 beans, 5 on each side in colour B, and a total of 8 beans in colour A, to continue to have 18 beans. Let's go on to row 5. We start with our chain of 1. We're working a half double crochet into the top of that first stitch. Make sure you do your chain 1 before we continue on to work a bean stitch. Oh goodness, I've yarned over. And then we're going to work our first bean stitch into the next side of the bean, and we're changing straight back to colour B. Because we have the right side of our project facing, I'm keeping my colour to the back. And then we are going to be working, oops, I was getting caught on that edge. And then we're going to be working 4 bean stitches with colour B. Once you've worked those 4 bean stitches in colour B, once again we change back to colour A, ready to work, this time 7 beans in colour A. Continue to carry your colour B with you, ready for the next colour change, and I'll meet you once you've worked those 7 bean stitches. Once you've worked those 7 bean stitches, we can of course change back to colour B, where we're going to be working 4 bean stitches in colour B before we change back again to colour A. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to complete our chain 1 with colour A. Once we've changed back to colour A, we don't need to carry colour B at this point, so we just need to work our final 2 bean stitches with colour A. And then we're just working 1 half double crochet into the next, and we leave those remaining stitches unworked. So where are we when it comes to putting our mug in? Let's have a little look. We're already halfway up our mug, and you can see how, I'll pull that out of the way. You can see how that join is going to come across the middle underneath the handle just to hold it in place. And that's why we need those fasteners. And it just helps keep the mug from slipping around too much. Got quite a nice little Christmas tree forming. If, like me, you're getting a bit of a twist on your yarn, just simply flip it around a couple of times and it will untwist the yarn for you. I should have done it a fair few times before now. And it just prevents your yarn getting too tangly and too annoying. So at the end of row 5, you should have 10 beans in white and 8 beans in, shouldn't say white, sorry, colour A, and 8 beans in colour B. Let's go on to row 6. We start with our turning chain of 3. Move that yarn around so we've got it in the right place. Remember, we're leaving these stitches unworked because that's where we're going to put our snap fasteners. We start with our half double crochet in that first stitch, followed by our chain 1. We are then going to work 2 bean stitches in colour A before changing back to colour B. So I'm just going to yarn over and change straight to colour B. I'm going to continue to carry colour A, of course. Where's that space gone? There it is. So we're going to then work 3 beans. Oh, I keep yarning over, doing half doubles, silly me. We're going to work 3 beans in colour B. Before, of course, we change back to colour A. We're going to work 8 beans in colour A. Find the side of that bean, there it is. So we're doing 8 in colour A this time. All the time we're carrying across colour B as well. Once you've made those 8 beans, we can, of course, wrong way, bring that back first, change back to colour B, and this time we're going to be making, and again we're going to be making 3 beans in colour B. And 3. Going to change back to colour A, ready to work 2 beans in colour A. Oh, I forgot to carry. Oh, I don't need to carry it yet. The autopilot is number 2. And then, of course, we work our final half double crochet into the top of that final stitch. So at the end of row 6, our trees are fair coming in, aren't they, on each side, and you should have 12 beans in colour A and just 6 beans in colour B. I've already done my chain 1 going into row 7. We're going to start with our half double crochet, make our have I done it already? All the autopilot in me, honestly. Don't forget to do your chain 1 after your half double crochet, and then we are going to make 2 beans with colour A. That's 1 and 2. Oh, don't need to do that second chain 1, do I? Oh, keep the yarn to the back because we're facing the right side of our project. We can change to colour B, and then we are going to work 2 beans in colour B. That's 1 and 2. We're changing straight back to colour A after that second bean, where we're going to be working 9 beans in colour A. Once we've worked those 9 beans in colour A, we can swap back to colour B, where we're going to work our 2 beans in colour B and 2. Change back to colour A, where we're going to be working 3 beans back to our final stitch. Don't need to carry that green this time. So that's 1, 2 and 3, before working a half double crochet into the top of that final stitch. At the end of row 7, you should have 14 beans in A and just 4 beans in colour B. I've already done my chain 1 going into row 8. We are of course starting with our half double crochet, making our chain 1. Where's that green gone? There we are. And we are going to be working 3 beans in colour A. That's 1 and 3. I'm going to change over to colour B. And then we are ready to work 1 lonely bean in colour B. You don't even have to carry the A on this one if you don't want to. I'm going to carry mine anyway, without that getting in the way. There we go. So we can change straight back to colour A. It's entirely up to you if you want to carry colour B the whole way around, or of course you can fasten off and just rejoin it for the last bean that we're going to do. Before you rejoin, we need to of course make 10 beans in colour A, and I will meet you once you've done that to work our final green bean. Oh, that's silly. Our final bean in colour B, should I say. So make those 10 beans in colour A, and I will see you shortly. Once you've worked those 10 beans in A, just changing back to B for the final time. Making that chain 1, and we're working 1 final bean in colour B, and then changing straight back to colour A for the close. We then need to work 3 final beans in colour A to reach the end of this row. Of course, we're going to end the row with a half double crochet. I can find the top of the stitch. There we are. So at the end of row 8, you should have just 2 beans in B, 16 beans in A. I'm going to fasten off colour B, and I can't use scissors with my right hand, so that was fun. and I've left a nice long tail so I can weave that in later. So at this point you can of course check the height of your mug cozy. I'm just going to add, we've got 2 more rows to go. One of them is a nice small row, so it won't add much height onto our project, so don't worry about that if you're reaching the top of your mug. For row 9 we start with our turning chain of 1. We're going to work our half double crochet into the same, make our chain 1, and we are just going to work a simple row of bean stitches all the way across to our final stitch in just one colour. It's going to seem incredibly quick compared to the last few rows we've had where we're changing colours and making sure that we're carrying yarns. So work across, working 1 bean stitch into each across, and then once you've worked all the way around we're going to end by working 1 half double crochet into the top of that stitch. We then are going to make our chain of 6, lost count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We should have 18 bean stitches, 2 half double crochets and a chain 6 at this point. We are then going to turn to work back down our chain, working 1 single crochet into the second and next 4 chains. So that's 2, 3, where's it gone, and 4. Make sure that your chain is not, oh, I've only done 3, goodness, sorry, and 4. Make sure you're not twisted and you have, oops, the top of your project facing you. We are then simply going to work a little small edging by working 1 US single crochet into each stitch and chain 1 space. And when I say stitch, I mean into the side of your bean and then into the chain 1 space next to it. And it's just going to give us a nice little edging at the top of our mug cozy. Just working my final single crochet before I fasten off. Just going to grab my scissors, fasten off with a long tail, use my hook to bring that through. And all that's left to do is to weave in our ends and obviously attach our snap fasteners. The idea is that your snap fasteners will meet at the sides of your mug cozy and come around your handle to help hold it securely in place when it's being used. I'll grab my previously made one so you can see where I put mine. So if I grab my other one, it's all woven in nicely. You can simply just place your, don't look at my sewing, I never claim to be a seamstress. We're just going to sew on our fasteners. I've got my 2 sticky out ones and then I've got the corresponding one, corresponding half of the snap fastener. I do wish I'd used metal ones so I could see what I'm doing. They certainly are invisible, that's what they're called, the invisible snap fasteners. And then there you have your completed mug cozy. I do hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've enjoyed making your very own Christmas tree mug cozy. Thank you so much for joining me as always, and I will see you in the next video.